Welcome back, APUSH students. Today is How to LEQ Unit 3. This is a series where I walk you through complete essays for every single unit of APUSH. These examples use real prompts with real raw essays, so don't mind the grammar or spelling mistakes. Now here are the prompts. The first thing you want to do is identify what type of prompt format these are. These are of the causation format. The first one is evaluate the relative importance of the political, economic, and diplomatic crises of the 1780s on the creation of the United States Constitution. The second one is evaluate the relative importance of causes for the United States entering the War of 1812. And the last one is evaluate the relative importance of factors that caused the emergence of political parties in the period 1789 to 1824. Now, I strongly encourage you to practice on or at least think about every single one of these prompts, but for this video, I'm going to be doing the second prompt. So for the thesis, again, we're going to be doing the prompt, evaluate the relative importance of causes for the United States entering the War of 1812. So the first thing I'm going to do is try and think of two different causes, and then I'm going to think about how I'm going to articulate how one of the causes is more important than the other one. So when I'm thinking about causes for entering the War of 1812, I'm thinking about what Britain is doing to the United States post-revolution and how that's impacting their relationship. And then I'm also thinking about some of the problems with the American Indians and the native tribes in the region and how Great Britain is influencing that. So here's the thesis I came up with. Although British support of American Indians against frontiersmen aroused support for entering the War of 1812, the threat posed to the Republican experiment due to the US not being able to navigate foreign conflict was more important to causing the War of 1812 because it revealed that the war was necessary to revive credibility for the future of the Republic. So what I'm noting on in the second part, the more important cause, things about like manifest destiny and westward expansion that really plays a role in what America is supposed to be. In this time period, we heard from a lot of politicians like Thomas Jefferson that the Republican dream for the country was to expand westward and become a great big country. But if they weren't able to secure their borders and fight off Great Britain's influence in their affairs, then that dream could never really be realized, and that's why I'm arguing that that cause is more important. So here's the context and intro. In the post-revolution world, the United States faced many new internal challenges. Democratic Republicans and Federalists fought for power, poor men fought for equality, and sectionalist divides between North and South brewed. But America was still not safe from foreign conflict, as they became intertwined in the feud between Napoleon's France and Britain, which eventually found the United States at odds with Britain yet again. Although British support of American Indians against frontiersmen aroused support for entering the War of 1812, the threat posed to the Republican experiment due to the US not being able to navigate foreign conflict was more important to causing the War of 1812 because it revealed that the war was necessary to revive credibility for the future of the Republic. So here's the first body paragraph. British support for frontier American Indians against the frontier citizens caused the outbreak of the War of 1812 because it posed an immediate homeland threat that aroused anger towards Britain. According to frontier Americans reporting back to Washington, they suspected the British of supplying American Indians with guns and supplies to push back against American expansionists. Popular political cartoons were created, picturing American Indians trading the bloody scalps of American heads to British officers for goods and supplies. This tension and propaganda inspired the new, young, aggressive war hawks in Congress to push more and more for conflict against Britain. They became upset with the president's pushes for more diplomatic efforts to solve the conflict. It is evident that British support of American Indians against frontier settlers aroused tension and support for entering the War of 1812, but as one looks further into the issue of American Indian tension, like expansionism, it opens up the claim that the more important cause was a more abstract idea surrounding the idea of republicanism. So in that last part, I am, yes, concluding that British support of American Indians was a major cause of the War of 1812, but the root of that conflict comes from the American goal of expanding westward, the American goal of establishing a large republic that covers from sea to sea. And that's when I start getting into the more abstract ideas like manifest destiny and the idea of the Jeffersonian Republic. So here's the second body paragraph. The threat posed to the United States as a result of not being able to navigate their conflict with European powers is more important to causing the outbreak of the War of 1812 because of the need to restore credibility in the Republican experiment. When Britain dropped their orders in council and the French responded, a combined effort to restrict almost all trade in Europe, it greatly involved America, which lost its ability to trade safely with the European superpowers. President Jefferson tried to solve the problem by blocking all American foreign shipping in the Embargo Act, but when it crushed the domestic economy rather than the intended effort of crushing the European economy, America needed something new. Macon's Bill No. 2 basically said that whatever nation repealed its trade restrictions first, America would allow their ships to trade with them. America once again greatly overlooked Europe's non-reliance on America and simultaneously revealed their own reliance on Europe. This grave mistake effectively showed that America was at the submission of the European powers, an idea that could threaten America's very freedom to survive as an independent republic. Along with the threat of submission, not being able to solve the frontier issues was not only an immediate threat, but a long-term threat to Jeffersonian Republican ideas. Jefferson's dream was of a vast, ever-expanding society of agriculture birthed from freedom. If America could not stop Britain from supporting conflict in the frontier, Jefferson's dream could not come to fruition and the Republican experiment would not reach its desired result. Because of both the threat of submission to European powers and the continued allowance of Britain to stop expansionism, it proved necessary that the US needed to enter the War of 1812 to restore credibility for the survival of the Republican experiment in the future. So you can see here we did a pretty good job of expanding the ideas that we talked about earlier when we started to get into more of the specifics, like the submission to European powers and the allowance of Britain to stop expansionism. That's the specific details for how it could threaten the Republican experiment. And then later in the conclusion, we're going to touch again on the importance of that issue and why it's more important than the first cause. So here's the conclusion. The abstract cause of the threat to the Republican experiment was more important than the immediate cause of Britain supplying American Indians, because it was a threat to the Republican experiment that revealed why it was necessary to enter the War of 1812 for both the present and the future. Because of America's victory in the War of 1812, the western lands of America were less threatened, and nationalism stirred among citizens proud of the US for standing up against the threat of submission to European powers. This nationalism and open territory gave way to the government putting more emphasis on connecting the different regions. America's continued desire to expand influenced ideas like manifest destiny, and their restored credibility gave way to the Monroe Doctrine. Because of the War of 1812, nothing could stop the US from fulfilling the Republican experiment except themselves. So in the conclusion, we wrap up why that idea of the Republican experiment, why that cause was the most important, and then we connect it to further periods like the expansion of manifest destiny in the culture of America, and then we talk about the Monroe Doctrine, how America started to put itself more in control of North America and that hemisphere as a whole. Then we wrap it up with a kind of cringe ending, but it's a good way to leave it open-ended and encourage thought from the reader. And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and goodbye. Yo, if you're super cool and awesome, you should follow my Twitter or X if you're that kind of person. It's at Clark4724. I post a lot of random stuff on there, but I also post channel updates and when my next videos are coming out. So if you're gonna keep watching my channel, then I recommend you follow, and thanks.